Remote work is something that is excellent, but it can be dangerous. Let me explain. We have been calling, those of us in the industry of management and leadership and communication and transformation, have been calling for digital transformation for years. It's not something new to us. And many of us have seen it as it's a sine qua non. In other words, we can't move forward. You can't think about your industry or your company in 4 or 5 or 6 years without adopting a technological and digital transformation. I am not here to talk to you about platforms, technologies, or processes. I'm here to talk to you about what I know. And what I know is management and leadership. There are people who understand and manage technology better than I do, and I can maybe have some of them present with us next week during the webinar. But let me address management and leadership issues. Where I see the danger, where it could be dangerous for our organization, is if we make something that we're not prepared for. We don't have the tools necessary for this transformation to succeed. And what I mean by tools here, again, focusing on leadership and management, there are certain ways that we need to think and behave, and how we think and behave leads us to make certain decisions. Forget about technology platforms, forget about infrastructure. First of all, now you have a bunch of people who are accustomed, they have certain habits, certain behaviors, certain routines. Many of them identify and find who they are by being present at work. And all of a sudden, this crisis has forced them to be alone. Some folks aren't able to deal with that for 8 or 9 or 10 hours a day. Home is business, business is home, and that is a difficult thing. And so we as leaders need to be aware of that. We need to understand that there is additional pressure on our employees. As managers, we have always hired people to watch overs, to supervise, to measure, to basically be policemen for employees. Well, let me tell you that that's only one dimension, and that dimension is going to change, because to be a good manager or a good leader à distance, okay, you have to develop other capabilities. The second capability that you have to develop is the awareness of your inner world, and the awareness of the inner world of your employees. Let me explain. An employee who, when you ask him, tell me, introduce yourself, he tells you what he does for work. He identifies himself with his job. He identifies himself with the people he works with. He identifies himself within that corporation. That was just taken away from him. The ability to come to work every morning and break that routine of saying hello to this guy and knocking on someone's office, say hey, and then going downstairs and having a cup of coffee, all of that's changed. He is now in a physical and mental and psychological environment that he had not considered just a month before. We as managers, as leaders have to be aware of that. And what does that mean? The task that we give this person may have to change. The way we communicate with this person may have to change. The team to which he belongs may have to change. The project itself may have to change. So not being aware of those things as a manager or a leader is dangerous. So inner world values, morality, you may have people that like to be given tasks, specific tasks, and told exact and micromanaged. There are some people like that. The third one is our relationship with these people. I call it the third dimension is relating. How we relate, our inner relationships, not just with our employees, but with the employees themselves, okay, has changed. It is now a virtual relationship. And this virtual relationship requires specific type of management, specific type of leadership. In other words, what you need to know about your employees is more than just his name and his grade and the position. You need to know what bothers him at home. Is his health okay? Is his mother okay? Today, as a leader, as a boss, you need to understand the concerns of your employees. Because if you do not understand the concerns of your employees, you do not understand your employee, and then you may put him in the wrong task. You may put him in the wrong team. You may ask and acquire about certain things that are not appropriate. So the two dimensions I just last mentioned are absent in most companies, because what we always focused on and rewarded and said someone was a great manager, a great leader, was the doing part, the task part. So aside from doing, now we added two new dimensions, the relating and the inner being, the inner value. So now we have three dimensions. The fourth dimension is the ability to create a synchronization between all three. There are changes that you may have to make to the doing part, the task, the project, the management, the team leaders. There are changes that you may have to make in the relationships you have with each individual or within the teams. You do not necessarily have to keep the same team working together. There's a pretty good chance that you may have to break up the team because they don't react the same way to being working at home alone, autonomous, where they have to decide what their priorities. You have to increase the level of communication with your employees virtually. You have to learn to ask them different sets of questions. So these are all elements that we need to pay attention to. If you are not paying attention to these three dimensions, and the fourth one being synchronizing, by the way, and that is the 4D leadership type of virtual management that we need today, all you are doing is exacerbating the situation within your teams and making it difficult for them. The level of frustration will increase. The level of absenteeism, in other words, they may physically be there, but they're not actually productive. The level of trust, which is the primary, the most important thing that you have to work on today. If I were one of you people watching, managing, and have these concerns about what to do during and after, that's the first thing I would think about. How do I increase the level of trust between me and my employees and between themselves? Because without that, you could have the greatest technological platform, you could be the greatest expert, greatest manager, the greatest technician. All of those things could be available, but if trust isn't there, and we all seen this in human relations. Now, how do you build trust when trust was already broken? You have two choices. If it's a new employee that you just acquired after the crisis, you are talking about building a new relationship. And that's much easier done than if you have to rebuild trust. Someone that never trusted you before, he works for you simply for a paycheck, but he doesn't trust you, and you don't trust him. And you're saying to yourself, wait a sec, I didn't trust him when he worked here, now I'm going to trust him? He's at home? How do you avoid that? How do you eliminate that? You eliminate that by open discussions, by asking, as I said earlier, different sets of questions, by coming to this person and say, hey, telling me, how do you see this? How do you see this? How do you see yourself being productive? How do you see yourself being part of the team? Do you see yourself staying within the same team? Do you see yourself working on a different project? Do you see yourself working 9 to 5? Do you prefer to work at night? Maybe your wife works in the morning, and then when she comes home, you can focus more on your task. You need to be aware of these things. This is the mind shift that I spoke about earlier. And now I encourage you, as I said earlier, we're doing a whole webinar on this by the end of the week. I encourage you to get in touch with us through contact@caddlh.com, or there is a link, a Google Doc link, where you can ask specific questions. Don't miss the webinar next week. If you have any specific questions about managing or leading people from remote work, let me know. I'll be more than glad to help you. And I wish you the best of luck and hope to see you all do very well. Stay safe. I love you all. And don't forget the mask. You need to be alive so that this country can stay alive. Shaya Taiba.